Night falls over a West African village. The air is thick with anticipation as the first drumbeat ripples through the darkness, calling neighbors from their homes. Fires flicker, faces gather, and the music begins, rhythms entwined with memory and meaning, echoing the footsteps of ancestors. In Africa, music is not merely entertainment, it is the heartbeat of life. It speaks when words fail, marking births, mourning deaths, settling disputes, and summoning spirits. Songs travel with traders across deserts and rivers, weaving a web of sound that connects distant peoples. Over centuries, these rhythms and melodies have crossed oceans, transforming and being transformed, shaping the soundtrack of continents far from their source. To understand world music, one must listen for the African roots pulsing beneath. Here, in the cadence of everyday life, in ritual and celebration, begins a journey through music's oldest, deepest origins. Before the first drumbeat echoes across a village clearing, before the first voice rises in song beneath the wide African sky, there is already a pulse steady, deep, and ancient. Music in Africa is more than entertainment or a backdrop to daily life. It is, and always has been, a living, breathing force woven into the very fabric of existence. From the earliest days, as far as historians can trace, music has shaped how communities communicate, express joy and sorrow, remember the past, and dream of the future. To understand the African roots of world music, one must begin by listening for this pulse, felt in the ground, in the body, and in the shared breath of a people. In African societies, music is inseparable from daily life, from the gentle hum of a mother at sunrise to the grand communal celebrations marking the passage of seasons or the life of a beloved elder. Unlike many Western traditions, where music is often performed for a passive audience, African music is profoundly social. It invites participation, drawing in children, elders, and everyone in between. Singing, drumming, clapping, and dancing are not reserved for specialists or set apart from daily routines. They are woven into the ways people work the fields, grind grain, praise ancestors, or settle disputes. In these moments, music is not an isolated art, but a communal heartbeat, inviting all to share in its rhythm. This communal spirit is evident wherever music is found in Africa. At weddings, songs celebrate new unions and ancestral blessings. At funerals, they mourn, honor, and guide the departed on their journey. Even on the battlefield, music rallies courage, unites warriors, and signals strategic moves. In every instance, music is both message and messenger. It is sung, played, and danced not just for enjoyment but as a powerful means of communication, conveying emotions, wisdom, and instructions that words alone cannot express. Songs may recount the histories of clans, celebrate the harvest, or offer subtle criticism of leaders and customs, ensuring that no event of social importance passes without its own musical commentary. African music is deeply rooted in ritual. Ceremonies marking births, initiations, marriages, and deaths are unthinkable without music and dance. These rituals are not mere performances but essential acts of community life, reinforcing bonds and passing down values. Participation is as important as the performance itself. Through singing together, moving together, and remembering together, individuals find their place in the collective story. Among the Yu people of West Africa, for example, participation in music strengthens community bonds, fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness. This connection between music and social cohesion is echoed across the continent, wherever communities gather to sing and dance. Beyond celebration and ceremony, African music also serves as a mirror and a guide for society. Songs are repositories of indigenous knowledge, holding within them the collective memory of a people, their stories, beliefs, and lessons learned through generations. In this way, music becomes a living archive, preserving traditions that written words might lose. It is not uncommon for songs to act as social commentary, gently or sharply reflecting on societal happenings, the conduct of leaders, or the challenges faced by a community. In these cases, music becomes both a tool for moral education and a subtle means of critique, allowing communities to address sensitive issues in a framework that encourages reflection and, sometimes, change. Music in Africa is holistic in its approach, touching every aspect of life from the physical to the spiritual. Its rhythms and melodies are believed to influence behavior and even contribute to the sustainability and development of communities. Music has long been used as a therapeutic force, helping to heal both individuals and societies. In traditional settings, music and dance are integral to healing rituals, believed to restore balance and well-being. The therapeutic and philosophical connections between music and African worldviews are profound. Music is seen as a force that can bring harmony to the body and soul, connecting people to each other and to the spiritual world. In this sense, music is more than sound. It is an essential tool for maintaining the health and cohesion of the community. This central role of music in African culture is visible not only in times of joy or sorrow, but in the everyday rhythm of work and play. As people tend crops, build homes, or travel, they sing and drum, turning mundane tasks into opportunities for expression and connection. Music's integration with bodily movement, its inseparability from dance, is another key feature. Movement and rhythm go hand in hand, each amplifying the other. These practices are not simply about passing the time. They are ways of making meaning, of turning labor into celebration and daily routines into acts of collective identity. Over centuries, the resilience of African music has been tested by the tides of history. Even under the harsh conditions of enslavement, music remained a lifeline, a way for Africans and their descendants to preserve traditions, shape identity, and serve political and social functions. Songs carried memories and messages across oceans, sustaining hope and solidarity in the face of adversity. Through music, the pulse of Africa continued to beat, adapting to new surroundings and influences while holding on to its core. Though the instruments, languages, and styles vary from one region to another, the communal nature of African music is its defining thread. Drums, lyres, flutes, and voices are not just tools of melody, but instruments of connection, each note a bridge between past and present, individual and community, the earthly and the spiritual. Music, as scholars note, is at the heart of African society, a vessel for storytelling, a celebration of life, and a reflection of history and spirituality. As we set out to explore the African roots of world music, it is this enduring pulse we will follow, the rhythm that binds generations, the melodies that carry knowledge, and the harmonies that speak of survival and joy. In Africa, music is not just heard. It is lived, remembered, and shared, a vital force as old as the continent itself and as alive today as it has ever been. Across Africa, the soundscape is as varied and intricate as the continent itself, shaped by centuries of innovation, migration, and cultural exchange. The roots of world music draw nourishment from this soil, where rhythm, melody, and communal artistry have flourished in forms both ancient and strikingly new. To understand the global resonance of African music, one must first listen closely to its foundational elements, the instruments that give it voice, the polyrhythms that animate its pulse, the call and response that binds performer and listener, and the collective spirit that infuses every note. Traditional African instruments are as diverse as the landscapes from which they emerge. Picture the bright metallic plucking of the mambira, sometimes called the thumb piano, whose layered, cyclical melodies evoke the shimmer of sunlight on water. The mbira, with its metal tines mounted on a wooden board, is played by skilled hands that draw out both melody and rhythm, its hypnotic patterns often accompanying storytelling or ritual. In West Africa, the kora stands out, a 21-stringed harp lute fashioned from a large calabash gourd covered in cowskin. Its crystalline tones dance nimbly over complex bass lines, a sound as agile as the fingers of the griots who play it. Griots, the hereditary storytellers and musicians of West Africa, wield the kora and its cousin, the balafon, a wooden xylophone with resonant bars suspended over calabash gourds, crafting oral histories with each performance. Percussion instruments form the backbone of many African musical styles. The djembe, a goblet-shaped drum with a taut goatskin head, is perhaps the most recognizable, its voice capable of thunderous booms and delicate whispers. Its rhythms, often played in ensembles, are woven into intricate webs that challenge and delight both players and listeners. The talking drum, with its hourglass shape and adjustable tension cords, can mimic the tones and rhythms of human speech, serving as both instrument and means of communication across distances. Shakers, maracas, and the shekere, a beaded gourd rattle, add texture and drive, punctuating the music with their lively chatter. Flutes, often crafted from wood or bone, and the udu, a clay pot drum from Nigeria, complete the instrumental palette. These instruments are not merely tools for making sound, they are repositories of meaning and artistry. Their construction is often rich with symbolism. The choice of materials, the carvings and decorations, the very shape of the instrument all reflect regional identities and cosmologies. In many communities, drums and other instruments play vital roles in ceremonies and rituals, their voices believed to bridge the earthly and the spiritual. Some instruments communicate messages or signal important events, their rhythms carrying news from village to village. Across the continent, the adaptation of imported instruments such as the guitar or accordion has sparked new musical traditions, but always with a distinctly African sensibility, reshaping these tools to fit local tastes and expressive needs. If the instruments are the body of African music, rhythm is its heartbeat. African music is renowned for its polyrhythmic complexity, a feature that has profoundly influenced musical traditions around the world. Polyrhythms, Multiple, interlocking rhythms played simultaneously create a sense of groove that is both grounding and exhilarating. In this musical logic, no single rhythm dominates. Instead, each part contributes to a larger, ever-shifting tapestry. Percussion ensembles might layer patterns in 3, 4, 6, or 12 beats, their cycles overlapping and interweaving in ways that defy easy counting. This rhythmic sophistication is not confined to drums. Voices, clapping, and melodic instruments all participate, each taking up a piece of the rhythmic puzzle. The result is music that is dynamic, propulsive, and alive, inviting movement and participation. The principle of polyrhythm is not just a technical feat, it expresses a worldview that values balance, dialogue, and collective effort. In the hands of skilled musicians, polyrhythms become a conversation, a way of expressing the complexities of life itself. These grooves are passed down through generations, taught by ear and by example, often in communal settings where everyone learns by doing. The legacy of African polyrhythms can be heard wherever the African diaspora has taken root, from the syncopated beats of Afro-Cuban salsa to the swing of jazz and the pulse of hip-hop. Call and response is another foundational characteristic of African music, shaping both structure and social interaction. In its simplest form, a leader sings or plays a phrase, the call, and the group answers with a response. This pattern appears in sacred songs, word chants, and celebratory music alike. The origins of call and response lie deep in sub-Saharan Africa, where it has always served as a tool for participation, inclusion, and collective expression. No one is left on the sidelines. The music is built on interaction, on voices rising and falling in dialogue. Call and response is more than just a musical device. It is a microcosm of African social values, reflecting the importance of listening, echoing, and building on the contributions of others. It turns performance into conversation and audience into co-creators. This structure has traveled far beyond Africa's shores, shaping genres as varied as gospel, blues, and soul, but its roots remain in the communal ethos of African village life. Performance practices in African music further reinforce its communal foundations. Ensembles are often formed by family members, neighbors, or wider community groups, with roles distributed according to age, skill, or occasion. Improvisation is highly valued. Musicians may vary rhythms, melodies, or lyrics in response to the mood of the gathering or the unfolding of the event. Ornamentation and modal structures add depth and nuance, with singers and instrumentalists weaving embellishments and exploring scales that may be pentatonic, modal, or unique to a region or group. The music is rarely written down. It lives in memory, passed from ear to ear, from hand to hand. The sheer diversity of African musical styles is staggering. From the driving drums of West African mbalax to the shimmering guitars of Congolese rumba and the hypnotic laments of the Ethiopian highlands, each region has developed its own sonic signature. Yet, despite this diversity, the foundational elements, traditional instruments, polyrhythms, call and response, and communal performance remain unmistakable. These are the threads that bind together the continent's musical tapestry, giving it both strength and beauty. In every corner of Africa, music is a living force, shaped by history but always evolving. Its instruments, rhythms, and structures have not only shaped the continent's own musical landscape, but have also sent ripples across oceans and centuries, touching ears and hearts around the world. The origins and rhythms of African music are not relics of the past. They are the living, breathing foundations upon which much of the world's music continues to build. When the winds of history shifted and the great African diaspora began, music became both a vessel and a lifeline. Across the Atlantic, on ships carrying millions from their homelands into bondage, African musical traditions endured, even as enslaved people were stripped of nearly everything else. The journey was unspeakably harsh, yet in the darkness below deck, voices rose in patterns and phrases that recalled distant villages. These were not merely echoes of memory, they were acts of survival, identity, and hope. As African peoples found themselves in new worlds, their music traveled with them, adapting and fusing with other traditions to seed the growth of entirely new genres. This chapter traces that extraordinary journey, following African music as it crossed borders, oceans, and centuries, shaping the soundscape of the modern world. The forced migration of Africans to the Americas marked a turning point in global music history. In the Americas and the Caribbean, African musical practices persisted, sometimes openly, sometimes hidden within the folds of new rituals and languages. The slave trade did not erase these traditions. Instead, it set the stage for a profound musical cross-pollination. Scholars have long examined how African music, carried by enslaved peoples, blended with European and indigenous elements, creating the foundations for musical forms that would eventually sweep the globe. Among the earliest and most poignant examples of this fusion are the spirituals sung by African Americans. Their roots are unmistakably African call and response, improvisation, and collective participation shape both the content and performance of these songs. The ring shout, a spiritual dance involving counterclockwise movement, hand clapping, and singing, can be traced directly to African ritual practice. Even as enslaved Africans adapted to the constraints of new religions and social realities, they retained the essence of their musical heritage, finding ways to express grief, hope, resistance, and spiritual longing through song. In the Caribbean and Latin America, African rhythms and performance styles blended with European melodies and instruments, producing genres like calypso, kaiso, and samba. The griots of West Africa, hereditary musicians and storytellers, found echoes in the storytellers and songsmiths of Trinidad and Brazil. Drumming, often suppressed by slaveholders who feared its power to unite and communicate, survived in coded forms. In Cuba and Haiti, drum ensembles accompanied religious ceremonies, preserving both the musical and spiritual dimensions of African heritage. Spirit possession rituals, with their intricate drumming and singing, became a way to maintain connections with ancestral worlds, even as new identities were forged in exile. The resilience of African musical systems is especially clear in the creation of the blues. This genre, born from the struggles of Black Americans in the rural South, retains the distinctive scales, blue notes, and expressive vocal techniques that are hallmarks of African music. Despite the trauma of dislocation and enslavement, the blues scale, marked by flattened thirds, fifths, and sevenths, demonstrates a remarkable cultural continuity. The very sound of the blues, its wailing bends and earthy timbre, carries with it the memory of African modes and melodies. The blues became the bedrock for a host of American musical forms, from jazz and rhythm and blues to rock and roll. Jazz, too, is unthinkable without the African legacy. The syncopated rhythms, polyrhythms, and improvisational dialogues that define jazz have deep roots in African musical concepts. The idea of swing, that intangible sense of rhythmic tension and release, owes much to African approaches to timing and group interplay. Musicians in New Orleans, Havana, and beyond drew from a well of African rhythmic ideas, creating a musical language that was at once new and ancient. Call and response, a technique that had functioned as a form of social communication in Africa, found new expression in jazz ensembles, gospel choirs, and dance bands. The spread of African rhythms did not stop at the borders of jazz and blues. In Brazil, African influences are woven into the fabric of samba, a genre that pulses with syncopated dance rhythms and communal singing. The same is true for reggae in Jamaica, which draws on African drumming patterns and vocal stylings, as well as a tradition of using music as a tool for spiritual reflection and social commentary. In each case, the transmission of African musical ideas was not a simple transfer, but a process of creative adaptation, shaped by local histories, technologies, and struggles. Over time, the legacy of African music has become a global phenomenon. The musical DNA, carried across the Atlantic, continues to shape genres far beyond the Americas. Hip-hop, funk, soul, and gospel all bear the imprint of African rhythms, melodic sensibilities, and performance practices. Museums and cultural institutions now trace the evolution of these genres, highlighting the ways in which Black musical innovation has changed the world's soundscape. From the spirituals born in bondage to the electrifying beats of modern pop, African American music stands as a testament to resilience, invention, and transformation. It is important to recognize that this story is not merely about survival, but about fusion and creativity. The cultural crossroads of the diaspora, where African, European, and indigenous traditions met, became fertile ground for new musical forms. Instruments were repurposed, languages blended, and rhythms reconfigured. In the Americas, African folklore and musical structures melded with local traditions, producing an ever-evolving tapestry of sound. The impact of these innovations extends far beyond music, shaping language, dance, and even social organization. The journey of African music through the diaspora is ongoing. Today, artists across continents continue to draw upon these deep roots, reimagining ancient rhythms and melodies for new audiences. The beat that once pulsed through village squares and sacred groves now resonates in stadiums, nightclubs, and headphones around the world. In every note of the blues, every swing of jazz, every pulse of samba or reggae, one can hear the echoes of that original crossing, a story of pain and possibility, rupture and renewal. Through migration, adaptation, and the ceaseless creativity of countless musicians, the African roots of world music remain vibrantly alive, reminding us that the crossroads where cultures meet are often the places where the world's most enduring songs are born. Listen closely to the music pulsing from car radios in Lagos traffic, the shimmering beats that fill Parisian nightclubs, or the bass-rich hooks in the latest American chart toppers, and you will hear a story of return, a cyclical rhythm echoing across continents and generations. Today, the African roots of world music are not simply hidden threads in far-flung genres. They are vibrant, unmistakable, and driving modern soundscapes in a global conversation. This is not a tale of influence that ended with the Jazz Age or the Reggae Revolution. It is an ongoing, ever-evolving exchange as African rhythms, melodies, and artists rise to undeniable prominence in the digital era. Consider how African music both absorbs and transforms global currents, creating something distinctly new. Since the late 20th century, the flow of musical ideas has moved in both directions. In the 1980s, a landmark moment arrived with Paul Simon's album, Graceland. Here, South African township jive and American pop collided, sparking debates, but also opening the world's ears to the creative possibilities of cross-cultural collaboration. Yet, if Graceland was a spotlight, it was only the beginning. In the decades since, this exchange has become a constant, dynamic force, with African musicians not just participating, but setting the pace for global trends. What stands out most in the modern era is how African musical forms have become foundational to popular genres across continents. In American music, the fusion of African roots with contemporary melodies is everywhere, from the syncopated beats of hip-hop and rhythm and blues to the soaring hooks of pop and the intricate improvisations of jazz. Even as these sounds blend and evolve, many African artists make a deliberate effort to preserve classic elements, the grooves, instruments, and vocal styles that define their heritage. This dance between innovation and tradition lies at the heart of African musical fusion in a globalized world. Collaboration fuels this musical resurgence. In recent years, the world has witnessed an explosion of partnerships between African musicians and artists from the Americas and beyond. These collaborations are as diverse as they are groundbreaking. Burna Boy, for example, has worked with Beyoncé and Ed Sheeran, while WizKid's collaborations span artists from Drake to Justin Bieber. This creative dialogue is not limited to a handful of stars. It is widespread, with African and diaspora artists weaving together languages, rhythms, and perspectives in ways that feel both fresh and deeply familiar. The result is a surge of tracks that blur genre lines, Afro-pop merging with hip-hop, juju riffs finding their way into electronic dance music, and Ndambolo's infectious energy rippling through Latin pop hits. The phenomenon of African music being sampled in modern rap and rhythm and blues further testifies to its enduring power. Producers have reached for hypnotic rhythms, vocal stylings, and instrumental textures from Africa to add depth and originality to contemporary songs. Missy Elliott, for instance, has incorporated African musical samples into her tracks, bringing the sounds of the continent directly into the mainstream of American music. These choices are more than stylistic. They acknowledge a deep musical kinship, recognizing that the groove of modern hits is often rooted in African soil. Nowhere is this resurgence more visible than in the meteoric rise of Afrobeats. This genre, born from the fusion of traditional Nigerian rhythms and Western pop, has become a global force, carried by artists whose music now dominates international charts. Afrobeats is not a static style. It is a living, breathing genre that absorbs influences from reggae, hip-hop, rhythm and blues, and electronic music, while retaining the syncopation, call and response, and melodic patterns that mark its African identity. International record labels have played a significant role in propelling Afrobeats onto the world stage, investing in African talent and ensuring the sound reaches listeners from New York to Seoul. The impact of this global wave is measurable. Industry data reveals that, between 2024 and 2025, over 200 African artists charted on Shazam's Global Top 200, with several breaking into the top 10 and even claiming the #1 spot. This unprecedented visibility is matched by revenue growth and expanding audiences. The worldwide surge of Afrobeats, in particular, is reshaping the music industry's landscape, prompting high-profile collaborations with global icons and cementing the genre's place at the center of pop culture. The influence radiates outward, touching not just music but also dance, fashion, and social media trends. Afrobeat, distinct from Afrobeats but equally potent, has left an indelible mark on how people move, dress, and express themselves, from the streets of London to the stages of Tokyo. African popular music today is a mosaic of innovation and tradition. Genres like Afro-pop draw from a well of ancient rhythms, blending them with electronic beats and modern production. The danceable drive of Ndambolo, the bright guitar lines of highlife, and the groove-laden pulse of juju all find new life in contemporary arrangements. These styles do not merely mimic Western pop, they challenge and expand it, inviting global audiences to move to a different beat. Jazz provides another window into this ongoing exchange. Contemporary jazz artists continue to draw inspiration from African rhythms and instruments, crafting new sonic landscapes that honor their origins while pushing boundaries. The improvisational spirit, layered percussion, and cyclical patterns of African music remain central to jazz's evolution, proving that the dialogue between continents is as vital as ever. Perhaps most remarkable is how African artists are not only contributing to global music, but leading it. The charts tell part of the story. Over 200 African artists on the Shazam Global Top 200, with some achieving chart-topping success. But the cultural impact goes deeper. Afrobeats, for instance, has influenced mainstream pop, Latin music, K-pop, and EDM, demonstrating that the African groove is now a lingua franca spoken by dancers and listeners the world over. The story is still unfolding. Artists like Tyla, Burna Boy, and others have achieved international acclaim, while genres such as Amapiano and Afrobeat continue to gain recognition and reshape expectations. Yet challenges remain, navigating global music systems, ensuring fair representation, and maintaining creative autonomy in an industry that is both welcoming and competitive. Still, the momentum is undeniable. From Lagos to Los Angeles, from the clubs of Johannesburg to the studios of London, the African roots of world music are not just echoes of the past. They are the driving force of the present, the promise of the future, and a testament to the power of rhythm to connect, inspire, and transform. As you listen to the next chart-topping hit, the pulse you hear is more than a beat. It is history in motion, a groove that began in ancient circles and now travels at the speed of sound, carrying with it the stories, struggles, and triumphs of a continent that has always been, and remains, the heart of global music. Across centuries and continents, a thread weaves through the world's music, a thread spun from the heart of Africa and carried by generations through joy, struggle, migration, and change. As this audiobook's journey draws to a close, it is not an ending, but a recognition that this thread remains unbroken, binding together stories, rhythms, and dreams across the globe. The true wonder of African music lies not only in the past or in the traditions that shaped it, but in its living, pulsing presence in the music of today and tomorrow. From the earliest days, music in Africa was more than a pastime. It was, and remains, a force that shapes identity, a vital part of existence. African music is inseparable from the rituals and ceremonies that mark life's passages, its melodies and rhythms echoing in the laughter of children, the solemnity of elders, and the communal gatherings that define societies. It is a language of memory, a vessel for collective wisdom, and a living archive of experience. Scholars have long noted the indispensable role of music in African life, observing that it is not simply something people do, but something they are, a way of knowing and being known within a community. As music traveled with Africa's sons and daughters across oceans and through unfamiliar lands, it became a storyteller, carrying memories of homelands and hopes for futures yet unseen. In the African American experience, for example, music has served as a powerful vehicle for storytelling, a means to recount history, confront injustice, and celebrate resilience. The archives of African American music are rich with testimonies, each song a thread connecting past and present, weaving the pain of displacement with the triumph of survival. Through work songs, spirituals, blues, and beyond, the enduring influence of African roots is not only preserved, but constantly reimagined. This thread is perhaps most clearly heard in the tradition of call and response, a musical dialogue that persists from village gatherings to the stages of modern music festivals. The call and response pattern, simple in form yet profound in meaning, embodies a way of being together. It preserves heritage, fosters inclusion, and transforms audiences into participants. Even as genres change and technologies evolve, this pattern remains, a living link to Africa's musical legacy. It is not just a technique, but a philosophy, an invitation to listen, to answer, to belong. The influence of African music is not confined to those who can trace their ancestry to the continent. Its patterns, rhythms, and expressive power have shaped the very idea of world music. From archives documenting centuries of musical innovation to dance floors where new beats are born, African music is recognized by scholars and artists as a foundational force in the global soundscape. The recognition and celebration of African music's foundational role is not merely a matter of historical accuracy, but of cultural justice, an affirmation that the world's music is, in many ways, African music. Yet, as African music continues to rise on the world stage, questions remain about recognition and benefit. The global popularity of African genres and artists has brought new opportunities, but also new challenges. Who stands to gain from this worldwide embrace? How can the creators and communities who sustain these traditions be honored, represented, and empowered? These questions are not easily answered, but they remind us that the journey of African music is ongoing, its thread not only unbroken, but actively being woven into new patterns. The archives and resources that trace the history of African and African American music serve as reminders of this living legacy. They invite listeners and scholars alike to engage with local histories, to seek out the stories behind the sounds, and to recognize the ongoing impact of African music in every corner of the globe. Each archive, each collection of songs, stands as a testament to the enduring power of music to connect, heal, and inspire. In listening to the world around us, we are invited to hear Africa's influence in unexpected places. The rhythms that move us, the melodies that linger, the communal spirit that animates music festivals and street performances, all are echoes of traditions that have traveled far and adapted much, yet remain rooted in African soil. This is not a static inheritance, but a dynamic, evolving force. African music's power lies in its ability to adapt, to absorb new influences, and to speak across boundaries of language, geography, and culture. Recognizing Africa's foundational role in world music is an act of listening, not only with the ears but with the heart and mind. It is a call to honor the past, celebrate the present, and imagine futures in which the creators, innovators, and communities at the heart of this music are seen, heard, and valued. The unbroken thread of African music is not only about survival, but about transformation, about how music can carry memory, spark change, and create new possibilities for connection. As we close this journey, the invitation is simple: listen closely. In the pulse of a bass line, the sway of a melody, or the shared chorus of a crowd, you may hear the echo of a drumbeat from long ago, a reminder that, for all the ways the world's music continues to change, the thread of Africa endures. It is a thread that binds, that teaches, and that reminds us of our shared humanity. The story of African music is, in truth, the story of world music, a story still being written, one note, one voice, one dance at a time.